Hey everyone. Have you ever been on a trip and found yourself in a completely hilarious misunderstanding? Well, that's exactly what happened to Elena when she visited London for the first time. Her attempt to order steak turned into a funny but embarrassing moment that ended up teaching her a big lesson about language, culture, and not taking yourself too seriously. Stick around, because we're going to dive deep into this story. And trust me, you'll be laughing with her, and maybe at her by the end. Traveling abroad and trying to navigate a new language can often lead to funny moments. In fact, the more we try to understand a foreign language, the more we realize how tricky it can be. And sometimes, things just don't go as planned. That's exactly what happened to Elena. And her hilarious misunderstanding will not only make you laugh, but will also remind you that language learning is all about perseverance, patience, and embracing those little mistakes. So, if you've ever found yourself in a situation where things went a little awry, you're not alone. Trust me, we've all been there. Whether it's mispronouncing a word or misunderstanding a question, it's those very moments that make language learning so memorable. Now, before we jump into the story, I want to ask you a quick question. Have you ever had a language slip-up like Elena's? Maybe you've made a funny mistake that you can't stop laughing about. Or perhaps you've had one of those moments where you realize a huge misunderstanding just took place. What's the funniest mistake you've made while speaking a foreign language? Drop your stories in the comments below. I'd love to hear them. And if you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit the like button, share it with your friends. And of course, subscribe to the channel for more fun language lessons and entertaining stories. I always look forward to reading your comments. And I'm sure some of you will have even more hilarious travel moments to share. Learning a new language can feel daunting, but it's the humor and joy that come from our mistakes that make the experience special. So, let's dive right in and see what happened to Elena during her trip to London. All right, before we jump into the story, let's talk a little bit about shadowing, which is an incredibly powerful technique to help you improve your English speaking skills. You might have heard of it before, but for those who haven't, let me explain. Shadowing is a simple but very effective method for improving your spoken language skills. It involves listening to a fluent speaker and repeating exactly what they say, trying to match their rhythm, intonation, and pronunciation. It sounds easy, right? Well, it is simple, but trust me, it's a game changer when it comes to mastering pronunciation and fluency. Why is shadowing so important? The key is that you're not just passively listening to someone speak. Instead, you're actively engaging with the language by copying every nuance of how they speak. This helps you become more aware of how words are pronounced, how sentences flow, and even how emotions are conveyed through tone and pitch. All these small details are what make native speakers sound so natural, and by shadowing, you can incorporate those into your own speech. Now, I want you to remember, shadowing isn't about getting everything perfect right away. It's about repetition. The more you practice, the more confident you'll become. If you don't get it on the first try, that's okay. Language learning is all about persistence and patience. And that's exactly why today's story about Elena is perfect for practicing shadowing. Throughout this video, I'll break down the story slowly and clearly so you can follow along. I'll pause after each sentence, allowing you to repeat what I say. Don't worry if it feels hard at first. This exercise is all about getting you used to speaking at a natural pace and helping you become comfortable with the rhythm and flow of English. Shadowing can be done anytime, anywhere. You can practice with audio, video, podcasts, or even in person when you have the chance. The best part, you can do it even when you're by yourself, There's no need for a partner. All you need is a quiet space, a bit of focus, and a willingness to improve. Over time, you'll start sounding more natural and fluent, and you'll be amazed at how much you improve in a short amount of time. So, are you ready to practice shadowing with me? We're going to go through Elena's story, and you can follow along. Don't stress if you don't understand everything right away. Just focus on repeating after me and absorbing the rhythm of the language. Trust me, the more you do it, the more it will stick. Now, let's dive into Elena's story. I'll go slow, so you can follow along with me. Ready? Let's get started. So, Elena is a student of English, and like many of us when traveling, she's feeling both excited and a little nervous. She's been preparing for this trip for months, reading up on London's famous landmarks and brushing up on her English. The idea of exploring a new city with a rich history and culture excites her. But there's always a little bit of anxiety when it comes to actually using the language in real-life situations. This is where the story begins. And trust me, it's something many language learners can relate to. Elena arrives in London, and her senses are immediately overwhelmed by the grandeur of the city. She's finally here. London is everything she imagined, filled with magnificent buildings, busy streets, and, of course, the iconic British accents that she's heard so much about in her language classes. As a tourist, she's eager to explore, take photos, and see the famous sights. She spends the day wandering around the city, visiting Big Ben, taking photos in front of the London Eye, and marveling at the famous red telephone booths. But after a long day of sightseeing, Elena is feeling hungry, and it's time to find a place to eat. She spots a cozy little restaurant that looks perfect for a nice meal. The lights are soft. The atmosphere is warm and inviting, and people inside seem to be enjoying their meals. Elena feels like this could be the perfect place to unwind after a long day of sightseeing. She enters the restaurant, excited to try some British food, and a friendly waiter greets her at the door. He smiles warmly and asks, "Good evening. Table for one, Elena?" A bit nervous but eager to practice her English. Smiles back and says, "Yes, please." The waiter leads her to a small table by the window, and Elena sits down, eagerly looking over the menu. After all, she's hungry and ready to try something delicious. As she skims the menu, Elena spots it steak. Now, if you know anything about Elena, you know that she loves steak. It's one of her favorite foods, and she's excited to finally order it in the heart of London. So, she's feeling good about the decision. Steak is an easy choice. The waiter approaches her table. "Ready to take her order?" he asks. "Are you ready to order?" Elena confidently says, "Yes, I want the steak, please." The waiter writes it down in his notebook and then asks, "How do you want it cooked now?" Here's where things take an unexpected turn. Elena doesn't quite understand what he means. When you're learning a new language, sometimes even the simplest questions can throw you off. It's like when you've studied a language for years and feel confident, but when it's time to actually use it, things get confusing. We've all been there, right? That moment when you hear a question and you're not sure if you fully understand. So, instead of feeling calm, Elena freezes up for a moment, trying to process the question. She understands the word cooked, so she thinks the waiter is asking about the amount of steak she wants. Maybe he's asking if she wants a small portion or a large one. In her mind, the question seems to be about the portion size. "So," Elena confidently replies, A big one, please, and even stretches out her arms to indicate the size of the steak she wants. She's thinking, the bigger, the better, right? But the waiter looks at her with confusion written on his face. He blinks a couple of times. Trying to process her answer, he tilts his head slightly, and Elena can tell that something's off. The waiter doesn't seem to understand her request, so he repeats the question, this time offering some options: rare, medium, or well done. Elena is now completely puzzled. She's heard the words rare, medium, and well done before, but she doesn't know what they mean when it comes to steak. She tries to think fast. Rare could mean not cooked, maybe just lightly cooked. Medium could be in the middle, and well done seems like the most cooked option, but she's not entirely sure. It's a situation where you think you understand, but then the more you think about it, the more confusing it becomes. She doesn't want to admit that she's confused. After all, Elena doesn't want to look silly, especially when she's trying so hard to use English. So instead of asking for clarification, she makes a guess. Her guess is that the waiter must be asking how much steak she wants to be cooked. She doesn't know what else to do. So she says, very, very cooked. In her mind, she's making a very reasonable choice. After all, she wants her steak to be fully cooked, right? So, very, very cooked seems like the perfect answer. In fact, Elena feels proud of her response, thinking she's nailed it. She's chosen the most cooked option, and surely that's what the waiter wanted to know. The waiter pauses for a second, looks at her curiously, but then he nods, writes it down in his notebook, and walks away. Elena breathes a sigh of relief. She feels like she's made the right choice, and soon enough, she'll be enjoying a delicious meal. A few minutes later, the waiter returns with a steaming plate in his hands. He places the dish in front of Elena and says, "Enjoy your meal." Elena smiles at him and looks down at her steak, eager to finally dig in. But as she glances at the plate, something feels off. The steak is black, completely black. It's charred, overcooked to the point where it looks like it's been burned on the grill. The edges are crispy and blackened, and the smell is not appetizing. Elena picks up her fork and tries to cut into it, but the steak is so tough that it feels like she's trying to cut through leather. At this moment, Elena's stomach sinks. She hesitates, takes a deep breath, and decides to take a bite. She cuts a small piece and chews it. The taste is overwhelming like fire. It's so burnt that it's almost impossible to eat. Elena's heart races, and she realizes, with horror, that she's made a huge mistake. The waiter, who is now standing at the counter, catches her eye. He's trying hard not to laugh, but Elena can see the corners of his mouth twitching. He knows exactly what's happened. He remembers her saying, very, very cooked, and he realizes that Elena's misunderstanding led to a disaster in the kitchen. Elena feels completely embarrassed, but she doesn't want to complain. After all, it's her fault. She smiles weakly, takes another bite of the terrible steak, and tries to act like it's not as bad as it seems. But deep down, she knows she made a huge mistake. After finishing the meal, or at least trying to, Elena quickly pays the bill and leaves the restaurant. As she walks out the door, she laughs at herself. Sure, it was a little embarrassing, but it was also kind of funny. And most importantly, she learned something valuable that she would never forget: how to properly order a steak in English. Later that evening, as Elena walks back to her hotel. She can't help but laugh at the whole situation. Sometimes, mistakes like these can be embarrassing in the moment, but they often make for the best stories. Elena realizes that it wasn't the end of the world. In fact, it was a learning experience, and she would never forget the importance of asking the waiter to cook her steak well done in the future. The big takeaway from this story is that mistakes are an inevitable part of learning a language. It's easy to get frustrated or embarrassed when things don't go the way we expect, but those moments are actually the ones that stick with us the most. Elena may have had an embarrassing moment at that restaurant, but she now knows how to properly order steak in English, and that lesson will stay with her forever. As language learners, it's important to remember that it's okay to make mistakes. In fact, those mistakes are often the best learning opportunities. So, the next time you find yourself in a situation where you don't understand something, just laugh, learn from it, and move forward. But here's the real takeaway from Elena's experience. She didn't let her mistakes stop her. Sure, she could have been embarrassed or upset. After all, her steak was burnt to a crisp, and she had clearly misunderstood the waiter's question. But instead of complaining or dwelling on it, Elena chose to laugh it off. She understood that it was just one of those moments that happen when you're learning a new language and exploring a new culture. This is where the true learning happens. Mistakes are an essential part of the learning process. Elena learned something valuable, not only how to properly order her steak next time, but also how to laugh at herself and move forward with a positive attitude. It's easy to think that language learning is all about memorizing vocabulary, grammar rules, and perfecting your pronunciation. However, the real value comes from embracing those awkward, funny, and sometimes embarrassing moments that teach us far more than any textbook could. Language is about communication, but it's also about the experience of learning and growing. And making mistakes is an inevitable and natural part of that. So, even though Elena made a mistake in ordering her steak, she walked away with a great story and a useful lesson that she will carry with her forever. She now knows exactly how to ask for her steak in any restaurant. And more importantly, she can look back on that funny moment and laugh, rather than letting it make her feel bad. This story is the perfect reminder that language learning is not just about perfection. It's about progress and embracing the moments that help you grow. Elena didn't let her mix-up ruin her experience. And neither should you. Language is meant to be lived, and sometimes, the best way to learn is through the mistakes we make along the way. Elena's story perfectly illustrates why learning a language can be so much fun. As you may know, language learning isn't all about flawless communication or avoiding errors. In fact, it's the mistakes that often make the most lasting impact. We all have embarrassing moments when we're speaking a foreign language, whether it's mispronouncing a word, misunderstanding a question, or saying something completely wrong. But those are the moments that we'll remember, and they're often the ones that help us improve the most. In language learning, progress isn't measured by how few mistakes you make, but by how much you've learned from each mistake. Elena's experience with the waiter's question about how to cook her steak is a perfect example of how mistakes are part of the process. In that moment, she could have felt defeated or frustrated, but instead, she chose to see the humor in it. And that's the beauty of learning a language. It's all about finding joy in the journey, not just focusing on the destination. Elena's story also shows us that learning a language is not a race. Everyone learns at their own pace. And no matter where you are on your language journey, every mistake is simply a step forward. Whether you're a beginner or have been studying for years, Mistakes are a constant companion in the process. They are reminders that we're trying, experimenting, and expanding our knowledge. So, if you've made mistakes in English or any other language, don't stress about them. Celebrate those moments. Each time you make a mistake and learn from it, you're one step closer to becoming more fluent and confident in the language. Just like Elena, you'll be able to look back on your mistakes and laugh, because that's the fun part of language learning. Language learning is about progress, not perfection. The more mistakes you make, the more opportunities you have to improve. Each error is just another building block in your journey to fluency. So, embrace those moments, and don't be afraid to laugh at yourself. Let's quickly review some useful phrases from this story that will be helpful for both traveling and everyday conversations. These are great expressions you can use to describe a place, food, or even a situation like Elena's. It looks warm and cozy. This is a great phrase to describe a place that feels comfortable, inviting, and relaxed. You can use it when talking about a restaurant, a cafe, or even a living room. Example: this coffee shop looks so warm and cozy. Rare, medium, or well done. These are the standard terms used to describe how a steak or other meat is cooked. It's good to know these terms, especially when ordering food in English-speaking countries. Rare: the meat is lightly cooked and the inside is red. Medium: the meat is cooked, but it's still pink and juicy inside. Well done: the meat is fully cooked and no longer pink. I don't want to complain. This phrase is useful when you need to express dissatisfaction, but don't want to sound rude or confrontational. It's a polite way to indicate that something isn't quite right, but you're not looking to cause trouble. Example: the soup was a bit too salty, but I don't want to complain. Misunderstood. This word is essential when you've heard something but didn't quite understand it in the way it was intended. Example: I misunderstood what the waiter asked me, and that's why I ordered the wrong dish. Burned steak. A burned steak is one that has been cooked for too long and becomes hard or blackened. It's a great term to use when talking about food that's overcooked. Example: I think I left the steak on the grill too long. It's a burned steak now. These phrases are incredibly useful, especially when traveling or eating out. Make sure to practice them so you can sound more natural when you're speaking in English. Remember, learning English or any language isn't a race. It's about consistent effort, practice, and finding joy in the process. Sometimes, we get so focused on getting everything right that we forget to enjoy the journey. Language learning is a process, and the mistakes we make along the way are part of what makes it fun and memorable. Just like Elena, you'll encounter moments that feel awkward, funny, or embarrassing. But those are the moments that will shape your learning experience. So, when you find yourself in a situation where you've made a mistake, don't beat yourself up. Embrace it. Laugh at yourself. And remember that it's just another step in your journey to becoming fluent in English. Before you go, I want you to take away this important message. Every mistake you make is an opportunity to learn something new. Whether you're ordering food, having a conversation, or just trying to communicate, don't be afraid to make mistakes. They are, in fact, the best teachers. Keep practicing, stay curious, and most importantly, have fun with your language learning. The more you enjoy the process, the faster you'll improve. So go ahead, make those mistakes, laugh at them, and keep moving forward. If you enjoyed this story and found these insights helpful, hit that like button, share it with your friends, and make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on more language learning tips and fun stories like this one. See you in the next video.